Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you are doing well today. It is Thursday, and I have had a busy day. Let me tell you what. I just got home, and I promised in one of my other videos that I would tell about my stepfather this week, and I guess I will do that today because I promised I would, and so I like to try to keep my promises because honesty is important to me. I want to tell you right now, this story involves torture. Biggest trigger warning I can possibly give you. There's no sexual content, but there's violence and torture. And basically, like sadistic, like torture. I'm not talking about like sadism. I'm talking about like just like really cruel torture. My stepfather would be considered I'm trying to think of the actual word that it was used by my therapist. He would be considered a well, I know that he was definitely like, okay, I think it was a sadistic sociopath or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the classification was of him, but regardless, he was a very evil person. And again, this is a trigger warning video, so leave now if you are easily triggered or you cannot stand violence, and because this is gonna get pretty deep. I'm even hoping I can just get through it without crying. I don't really talk about my stepdad a whole lot because of how truly sadistically evil he was, and how much, sorry, I'm fixing some of my crafty stuff. I fell over. Just how truly evil and just awful he was. I can use his name because he is likely not alive anymore, and even if he is, the chances of him finding me are very small. And since I'm not going to use his last name, I don't really have to worry about anything, I'm hoping. So, his name was Dave, and my mom met him when I was 6, I think. My dad had left when I was 5, so my mom was immediately on the lookout for another provider because she was terrified to be alone, and she needed to be taken care of because she was just one of those people that just couldn't be without somebody to take care of her or whatever. So she met him. I don't know where, don't know how, don't know any of that. Just know that the first day or night that my brother and I were taken to a restaurant to meet him, I knew straight off the bat I didn't like him. I don't know how I knew, but I knew that he was not a nice person. Even though he was full of charm, he was working his very best to try to make my brother and I laugh and to try to worm his way into us, liking him enough to become part of our family, I guess. I don't really know. He worked really hard. I think he won my brother over. I really don't know. But he could not. I would not laugh. I would not. I wanted nothing to do with him. I knew from the beginning I didn't like him. I don't know why. I don't know how. I just knew that he was not a nice person. On the way home from the restaurant, my mom asked my brother and I what we thought of him. I don't remember my brother's answer, but I remember saying, I don't think he's a nice guy. Now, I am 6 years old, and I am telling my mother that I think her boyfriend is not a nice guy. My mom had begun abusing me after my dad left when I was 5, but I don't think she had been getting physical with me at that point. I don't think she had been starting to smack me around and hit me with wooden spoons and all kinds of stuff. I think it was just mostly like narcissistic, verbal, mental abuse. So I didn't fear her at that point. So when I told her straight up that I didn't think he was a good guy, I thought I didn't like him. Like I said, I don't like him. I don't think he's a good guy. And I remember my mom laughed. And I remember she told me that I was a stupid kid that, what'd she say? Basically just like, oh, you're just this stupid little girl who doesn't understand, how love between adults works or something like that. I don't even remember the absolute thing. I just remember she called me stupid, a stupid little girl. And she said a bunch of stuff after that. And I was just I was hurt because she asked me what I thought of him and I was honest with her. And then she, made fun of me and was mean to me. And, so it was kind of confusing, conflicting, hurtful. Anyway, I really don't think it was too much longer after that time of meeting him. I honestly think it was less than 2 weeks later and he moved in. I remember that things just pretty much right from the beginning just weren't good. First of all, my mom told him that I told her that I didn't like him and I thought he was a bad guy. Thanks, Mom. But anyway, so that didn't help anything. Second of all, his first real conversation with me was me backed into a corner and him towering over me and basically loudly, not really screaming, but loudly saying to me, I have two beautiful real daughters, and you are nothing but a piece of shit to me, and I will never like you, and I will never learn to love you, and I honestly don't like you. And I didn't know how to reply to that. So, obviously I felt scared. because I have this man I don't know towering over me, telling me he hates me and he's never gonna like me, he's never gonna love me, and that his two daughters were beautiful and special and this and that, and I was just a piece of shit. So I was just kind of like, wow, like, okay, thanks, like I'm 6 years old, like, okay. And so that was like really shortly after he had moved in. And my mom didn't see this, not that I'm aware of anyway. I don't know if she heard it in another room. But this would not be the only time that he said this to me. Like, this was commonly said. It was commonly said that I was a piece of shit and I was never going to be as beautiful or precious as his own daughters were, and that I was basically in the way, and he started threatening to kill me. And I just remembered that, just like everything, it just like took off. Like, so it just started with a lot of mental and verbal things, like, just like, you're just a pathetic piece of shit, you're in the way, I don't need you in my life, you're a burden on your mother, I'm going to kill you because, nobody wants you around. And also remember, my mom is also telling me the same kind of things. So she started that when I was 5. When my father left, she started telling me that I was worthless and that I was in the way and I was the fault of everything that was wrong, and that she didn't love me and that she didn't want me around and that she wished I'd go kill myself or that I would get kidnapped or like all these things. So I'm hearing this from him, or I guess I'm hearing this from her, and now I'm hearing this from him. So I literally am feeling like this has to have some truth to it, because like both of my parents now, well, I mean, he's not really my parent at this point, they weren't married, but both of these adults in my life, one my mother, one my soon-to-be stepfather, are telling me that I'm just crap, I'm shit, I'm worthless, I would be better off if I just ended my life, because it would just be better for everybody in the entire world, because I was just pathetic and I was in the way and I was never going to amount to anything and nobody was ever going to like me, and just constant, just hateful, extremely hateful, hurtful things that destroyed my self-esteem and my self-worth, destroyed so much of my childhood. Like, it was already hard enough having my parents divorce and watching my mother abuse my father for 5 years. So like, my childhood was already pretty messed up, plus that, whatever happened to me with that neighbor that I don't remember like extreme details of, but when I was 2, I have a video on that, anyway, if you don't know, I was molested by a babysitter at 2, which I told my mother about, and she didn't care. But anyway, so like my entire childhood up until this point is now just almost completely just destroyed. It's like been almost completely taken from me, because it's like I just feel like no one loves me and nobody wants me around, and I didn't know how to take my own life. Like if I did, I probably would have done that, just because it was said to me so many times, and I believed to my core that everything they said to me was absolute truth, and honestly it probably was from their point of views. So I think the only thing that actually kept me from doing that is, number one, I didn't know how, and number two, I still had a dad who loves me, like so I still had a father, or I still had a parent that showed me love, and so I knew I was at least loved by him, which did help a bit. So Dave eventually went from the bullying and the insults and terrifying discussions of how he just wanted me to be dead and whatnot, to actually describing in great detail what he wanted to do to me to make me be dead, to make me disappear, to make me and not be a pain in his and my mother's life. And sorry, I'm just this is really hard to talk about, because from 6 to 9, he just said the most horrific things to me at the same time as my mom, but she wasn't doing this level, but she was still doing her thing. But so he upped the ante, I guess, on the mental abuse, from what he started out at to basically describing to me in great detail how first of all, he was in one of the services. I'm not going to say what branch. I'm not going to talk about those details, but he was a step above a drill sergeant, I believe. So you can imagine how cruel he would be, because of how wonderful drill sergeants are. But he would describe in great detail how he killed people when he went to Korea. He told me just the most graphic, horrific things that he did to these people, how he tortured them before he killed them. And I'm not going to go into the details of that because I just can't. But he would tell me that he was going to do that stuff to me. That he was going to take me way deep into the woods where nobody could hear me scream. And he would do those things. And then as my guts were all spilled out all around me, because he said he could open me up and just spill my guts everywhere in a way that I wouldn't die right away. I don't know if that's true or not. I have no idea. I was literally a child, but I believed it because an adult is telling me all this great detail of this horrific story of how he did these things to other people. But he said that it would be more special with me because instead of just killing me and going to the next person like he did with them, he would just let me lay there and the animals of the forest would come and eat my guts until I died. And I had horrific nightmares for years because I absolutely believed that he was going to do this someday. He also started talking about how he was going to poison my food or my drink or whatever. So he started out by telling me he was going to, and then so when he did, I'd be in so much pain because my insides would turn to goo, and I'd throw them all up, and that I wouldn't die right away, but that I would wish I was, because it was going to be so painful and, just, again, more horrific detail. And then one day he told me that he did poison my dinner after I had eaten it. And as I went into an absolute, complete, total panic attack, because I honestly believed him. I honestly believed that he had just followed through with the thing that he'd been saying to me for, at this point, it would have been, I think it would have been 7 at this point, maybe going on 8. He'd been saying that for so long, among other things. And this time, he just said, by the way, I just poisoned your dinner. You're gonna die. And I just remember screaming and crying and freaking out. And I begging my mom, who's sitting right there eating her dinner like it's nothing. I'm begging her to take me to the hospital and save me before this stuff happens. And she just completely ignores me. They both got really sick, twisted pleasure from watching me terrified out of my mind that at any moment my guts were going to start turning to goo and I was going to throw them up and die. And I'd like to say that was the only time that he did that, but it wasn't. He did that a lot. And after a few times, I actually got to the point where I didn't believe him. And so after he'd say it, I wouldn't react. And then, of course, this pissed him off. So then I'd get beat and then sent to my room. And basically, the next time he said it to me, I had to believe it and do the acting part. Otherwise, if I didn't, it always resulted in a really violent beating and me being sent to my room. And if I was lucky, I'd get to eat the next day, but sometimes I didn't. And so then I had to play that I was terrified, and I was just, it literally got to the point that I just So I'm around 9 at this point, I think, and I'm just like, I'm really to the point where I'm just like, I'm thinking to myself, just do it already. I'm so tired of this game. I'm tired of having to pretend I'm afraid. I'm tired of listening to this. I'm just if you're gonna do it, just fucking do it and get over with. I'm tired of this, like I can't deal with you, and I can't deal with my mom, and I can't deal with all this crap that's going on. Plus, by this point, I am now also being beaten every single day. And I don't remember what age that exactly started happening, but he did go from the extreme mental abuse to extreme physical violence. And I'm literally talking beatings, to the point that I found out in January of this year that I have traumatic brain injuries. I have a big one up here in my frontal lobe. I have a big one in my cerebellum. And I have some other issues. I have what looks like was either a small aneurysm, not aneurysm, a stroke, or a possible brain bleed. And they all, the neurologist says they are all old, like they could easily be from, that far back. Because I've not sustained any head injuries other than my childhood. That's the only head injuries I've ever received, was when my stepdad threw me around like a rag doll and would beat me unconscious. Which I remember 2 times specifically that he literally beat me unconscious. I'm sure there were more, but I just remember these 2 particular times. So it really, again, it surprised me, but it also didn't surprise me to find out that I had literal brain damage from his beatings, because they were severe. Now, granted, he didn't break any of my bones, which I don't know how, but the only broken bone I've ever had was I broke my leg when I was playing tag with a friend, and I didn't know the curb was muddy. When I jumped up on it, slipped, twisted my leg, and broke my tibial fibula. Other than that, I've never had a broken bone, surprisingly. But yeah, I have brain damage from the beatings that he gave me. And honestly, over the last several months, I've been having a lot of cognitive and other types of issues going on, which is why I had the MRI to begin with. And there's a lot of theories going on right now. I don't have an actual diagnosis right now. I have more tests and things that have to be done, but it's looking like the parts where my brain is dead from the TBIs, like there's a dead spot up here and a dead spot back in my cerebellum. So it looks like the one in the cerebellum is probably starting to cause me the physical and mental or cognitive things that I'm having, like just having issues with my memory. My short-term memory, my long-term memory is still fully intact. My short-term memory sucks. Also, I did not know I had ADHD. I mean, I was diagnosed with it as a kid, but I masked it very, very well and did not know I had it until January also, because, well, I would say February, because in January, it decided to just break out of its cage, and it ripped the mask away that I had been hiding in for all these years, and now I'm trying to learn how to deal with a whole whole new me, because the old me with the brain that worked and functioned well and could remember things is now gone, and now I have ADHD brain, and I'm on Adderall, and I'm just trying to figure life out right now. But anyway, the point is, I got beat every single day from my stepdad. I also got beat quite often from my mom. My mom did not beat me as severely as my stepdad, but my mom was more, I don't even know the word I'm looking for. I want to say more evil in the way that she did it. Because, I mean, Dave just beat me up. Just punched me, hit me, kicked me, threw me. Like, just how you would beat somebody up. My mom was more creative, I guess. So, I don't know how my mom had so many wooden spoons. I think the woman had bought stock in them or something, because she always had a freaking wooden spoon. That, not every day, but at least once a week. There was usually more. At least once a week, she would break a wooden spoon either across my face or over my head, because she was beating me in the face or the top of the head with a wooden spoon, because she was always drunk and angry and narcissistic and just a very evil, very mentally disturbed woman. So it's like every time she busted a wooden spoon over me, then the beating would finally stop. And then magically she'd have another wooden spoon for the next time she wanted to, beat me in the face and head. Now, where she was hitting me in the head was up here. I don't have TBIs up there. So it's likely her beatings did not cause the TBIs. But what Dave did is very, very much likely what they are from. So yeah, I'm getting beat every single day. I'm still hearing the narcissistic, I hate you, you're the problem, you're the reason why we have so many problems, you're the reason this, it's your fault for this, you make me do this, if you didn't do this, this wouldn't happen, just the typical narcissistic bullshit. And my stepdad, just, if he wasn't just completely and totally mentally screwing me up with his threats and just the most horrifically awful stories and things that he would say to me, and just the guy, he was literally sadistically crazy. He was a freaking monster. And it's really no wonder he had no contact with his daughters, because his ex-wife made sure that he could not see his daughters, not even with a they call him a supervision, not even with supervision. He wasn't even allowed to see his kids with supervision. He could talk to them on the phone, but when his ex-wife said, enough, the conversations were over. But I just wonder, did you do your own kids that way? Because clearly something's really, really wrong with you. But I don't feel like his kids were who he was abusing. I think he was abusing his wife, ex-wife. Because I mean, he would beat my mom too, but honestly, my mom would egg him on. My mom would push his buttons. My mom would do all the things that she knew she should not do because she knew his temper and she knew how to make him mad enough to beat on her. And it was almost like she needed him to beat on her. I don't know why. It's like she wasn't happy if she wasn't being beat on or thrown across the room. Why? I don't know. They were both sick in the freaking head. Okay? Like, so, just just the things that she did to get him to be so violent was just unreal. It's like I wanted to feel bad for her because he's beaten on her, but I'm also realizing she's the reason why he's beating on her, because she pushed and pushed and pushed and kept pissing him off to the point that he finally just snapped and beat her. So I suspect he beat his ex-wife. I don't know if he actually abused his kids, because he talked about his daughters like they were his most prized possessions. He was always buying them very expensive gifts and then showing me, let's see, if you were my daughter and I actually loved you, you could have this beautiful whatever it was. And it was always, his kids were around my age, so you know, these things were always things that I would have loved to have. I would have been honored to have had some of these things because they were quite expensive. And he would just, you know, just tell me, you know, just how much he hated me and I was in the way and I was never going to be one of his daughters, and how his daughters were going to get these beautiful gifts and blah, 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 blah. And so, like, it's just any way that he could show me how much he hated me, he did. He just, I think combat and his job really completed the sadistic mentality I suspect he already had as a youth. I don't know anything about his childhood. I don't know if he was abused. I don't know what his family life was like. I don't know anything about him. I just know that he was one of the most evil people I had ever met in my life. And I was his target. When he went to Korea the second time, you know, my mom cheated on him with the guy named Jay that I have a video of. Let's Meet Jay, who unfortunately did sexual things to me and also beat me. And then when Dave came back from Korea, thankfully Jay left my life. But anyway, I don't know. It's just, I don't understand why this man hated me so much. I don't understand how a grown man can see a 6-year-old child as somebody to torture and torment and beat. I don't understand how any adult can look at a child and think anything but loving thoughts. Like, I don't understand how you can look at a child and say, yeah, I think I want to beat the crap out of you, or I want to hurt you, or I want to do adult things that I shouldn't do to you. Like, it's like, how does an adult look at a child as anything other than the innocent being that they are, and then decide that they want to hurt them and destroy the person that they were? Because after these people do the things they do, these kids' lives are forever destroyed. They are never the same people. They will never, ever be the same mentally, physically, emotionally, ever again, because all this stuff takes a huge toll, especially on a child who is still impressionable and still, the brain is still growing and learning, and you've got a child that literally does not have its formed brain, and you are beating it and you are filling that brain with horrific things, and then like my mom, the things that she said to me were so damaging that even today I'm still in intense therapy to try to undo some of the lies that I still believe, that I know realistically aren't true, but it's really hard to get myself to fully believe that she was just a whack job, and she just said horrible things just to be mean, because she was my mom, like my mom, the person that's supposed to love me and protect me, and she didn't. And so I had her, and then I had him, and she allowed him to do this stuff, and like she never stopped him, and sometimes she would even tell him lies just so that he would beat me even harder than he would have originally beat me. Or maybe I got 2 beatings that day, just because she was she was also sadistically sick, besides being extremely narcissistic. And so there were some days I got 2, 3, 4 beatings in one day, but it was at least every single day, with the exception of holidays, because on holidays, they had to make good impressions on the family. So we all dressed up and went to family, and we all acted like a normal functioning family. And so there was no violence those days. There was no, they just acted like the perfect, sweetest, most loving parents that they could possibly be. And they fooled everybody. By the way, my mom and Dave got married when I was like 7. I left that out. I didn't mean to. So it was around 7 he became my stepdad. And I think that's when things actually really ramped up and got even worse, because now I was officially his stepdaughter. I was officially his toy, I guess. I don't know. What else to say? So I talked about the beatings, the talking about, I also, one of the other things he loved to do. So we often didn't have food. I mean, more so before he came to live with us, because my mom would drink all of the child support away that my dad would send. And my dad would send more money than he had to by the court, because he knew that my brother and I needed things. So he sent more money than he was even supposed to. And instead of using that for what it was intended for, my mom decided to use it to go to the bars and just stay drunk as much as possible. So my brother and I really didn't have access to healthy food, for sure. And we didn't really have access to much of anything. We had like cereal for breakfast, usually the sugary kids cereals that were quite popular back in the 80s. And we had like bread and peanut butter, but sometimes we just had to eat the peanut butter because we didn't have bread. Like we had like little bits and pieces of things, but sometimes we didn't have anything. So there were times that we would just have very empty bellies. We'd either go like, there was a lot of times I especially went to bed without having had anything to eat, because either there was no food to eat, or I was sent to bed without food as a punishment because of whatever reason they decided to say. I do not know if my brother was ever sent to bed without food purposefully. I don't think so. I don't know. But I do know that, you know, on the times we didn't have food, obviously he didn't either. But so Dave liked to use food as a punishment. So because he knew that we didn't really when we had stuff, it just wasn't really anything that was all that good. So he knew what my favorite things were to eat. And so he loved to do this thing where he would cook the food that I loved, and I could smell it like through the house, and I'd get like happy. This happened once that I smelt the food and I got really excited and really happy, because it's like, oh my God, we're actually going to have dinner, and it's actually going to be something that I really want to eat. Because when he came to live with us, he was from the South, I think, because he made a lot of Southern type food that I really didn't like pickled pig's feet and Brussels sprouts were his absolute favorite thing to eat. And every time he made that, I literally wouldn't eat it. And so he would force me to eat it, and then I'd throw up, and then I'd have to eat my throw up and the dinner as well. And he really, really enjoyed doing that. So he also really loved making my favorite food, making me think I was going to get to have it. He did this several times, but I only fell for it the one time because that was all it took. So, and then he just wasted his time making the food the rest of the times because I didn't fall for it, and I didn't, it didn't hurt me the way that he wanted it to, because I already knew it was coming. So he would make my favorite food, and then we'd be called to dinner, and of course the food's there on the table, and we'd be sitting down getting ready to have dinner, and he would be like, sorry, you're not gonna get any of this, instead you're gonna eat. And then he'd pull out the pickled pig's feet with the freaking Brussels sprouts or some other really disgusting thing, but it was always pickled pig's feet. Because he loved watching me throw up and making me eat it. So my mom and my brother would get to eat the good food that he made as well as he did. And I had the plate of disgusting shit. And like I said, he did this multiple times, and I only fell for it the one time thinking I was actually going to get to have the good stuff. And the rest of the time, when I smelled the good stuff, I knew that I was getting pickled pig's feet that night. And so I had to prepare my mind and stomach for that I was going to have to eat it and hopefully not throw it up. And so that I wouldn't have to also eat my puke, because it's really not fun to do. Trying to think. I think there was something else. This is just so hard to talk about. Like I said, I don't usually talk about him just because of how awful he was. I mean, my mom was awful too, but I mean, she was my mom, so I talk a lot about my mom, because as bad as everything is I've just told you about Dave, I have said this in other videos. All the abuse that I have been through in my entire life up until this point right now. Now, I've been molested, I've been raped, I've been beat, I've been starved, I've been, tortured, I've been just pretty much almost everything. I was even trafficked lightly, when I was younger from my mom. Out of everything that has happened to me, my mother's narcissistic abuse has by far been the worst thing that has affected me the most throughout my life. I have healed from a lot of the other stuff. I'm able to talk about these things and not fall apart anymore. I used to not be able to talk about Dave without panicking and crying and just falling apart. And you could see a couple times I had to really stop myself from crying, because I started feeling overwhelmed and like I needed, or I was going to cry, and I controlled myself, because through therapy and through healing and through lots of self-reflection, I have learned to process a lot of these things, and I've allowed myself to heal. And I need to work on healing my inner child, because she is extremely damaged still. And the biggest majority of that would be, again, my mother's narcissistic attacks on me. The constant blame, the constant sharing all of her financial fears, her general fears, so when she wasn't beating me and when she wasn't blaming me for everything under the sun, I was her friend, her therapist, the person that she just decided she needed to tell everything to at 5, 6, 7. Fill my head with all these adult worries and financial things, while also at the same time blaming me because we had these problems because of me. And so, everything that has been done to me, my mother's narcissistic abuse has been the most damaging, the most hardest thing that I have yet to try to heal from, that I have yet to process. I know about narcissism. I've read about narcissism. I've learned a lot about narcissism. I'm even getting ready to post a whole bunch of narcissist content on narcissism to add to the already content I have uploaded from like a couple years ago. It's in my stuff is labeled by playlists. If you're interested in the narcissistic content, it's all there. Just go look for it. But I'm expanding on that because narcissism is it's a big thing for me, because it is literally the worst thing that I have had to go through. And I have gone through a lot. Like, a lot. And again, as horrible as my stepdad was, as horrible as my mom was, it's still not everything. It's still not everything. But those two definitely made the biggest impact on my inner child, my self-esteem, my self-worth, my mental health. I have anxiety because of them. I have depression because of them. I started self-harming, not necessarily because of them, but they didn't help the situation. I actually started self-harming after I was raped at 10, and then my mom blamed me for it. That's when I started cutting myself. Yeah, just there's so much. There is so much that I have been through. I don't even know how I survived most of it, and honestly, my therapist don't either. So, but again, despite however you want to see what Dave did to me, however you want to judge what he did to me, you're going to have your own thoughts on it, which a lot of people say it's some of the worst things they've ever heard in their lives. Like they couldn't imagine, an adult saying such things to a child. And again, you don't know the details of the things he was saying to me, because I'm not sharing them, because it's too hard for me to literally talk about the graphic details of everything. But telling you about the woods and the animals and my guts should give you a good general idea of the types of torturistic things that he talked about and tormented me with, and just, yeah. No matter what your thoughts and feelings are about what I have just told you about my stepdad, yes, he damaged me. I have lasting brain damage because of him. I have PTSD and CPTSD because of him. But my mom's narcissistic abuse was by far much worse than any of the beatings I ever took. Was worse than being beaten and raped. Was worse than being molested. Was worse than being starved. Was worse than so many of the other things that I still have yet to talk about. But anyway, this video is now 59 minutes. And I do believe I said it would be a long one. And if I didn't, I'm sorry. But I am going to go now because I also have 3% battery. And I am going to go and unwind with my husband and try to forget this whole conversation I just had so that I can enjoy the rest of my evening and let go of the horrors that I just had to bring back into my memory and talk about. So I hope that you are all safe. I hope that you are doing well. If you are not safe, I hope that you can find your safety. And please, please, please know that no matter what anybody is saying to you, no matter what anybody is doing to you, it is not your fault if you are being hurt. It is not your fault if you are being blamed for the things that they are doing. You are not the one that's doing the things that are being done to you, and therefore it is not your fault, and you cannot do anything to control what's happening to you. So please do your best to just stay as safe as you can and get through it, because I promise you life does get better once you can escape the situation. And again, no matter how many times they want to blame you, it is not your fault. Stay safe, be blessed. I will talk to you all later.